Do you remember me, human? I once saved the alien queen's daughter. Elias had never expected his day to be extraordinary. The soft hum of the salvage bay filled the empty room, mingling with the scent of oil and scorched metal. Out on the edge of explored space, the human colony of Rhea 7 was quiet most days, its population small, its systems outdated, and its dangers rare. Elias liked it that way. Life here was predictable, safe, and simple, except when it was, and today it was not. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the half-repaired freighter in front of him. The ship was old, patched more times than he cared to count, yet it still held pride of place in the colony. He had salvaged parts from wrecks scattered across the asteroid belt to get it flying again. A part of him enjoyed the challenge. Another part, he admitted, just liked fixing things. There was something human in taking broken pieces and making them whole again. A sudden vibration under his feet caught his attention. The floor of the bay rumbled and Elias froze. This wasn't unusual. Asteroid activity sometimes shook the colony, but the frequency was wrong. Faster, sharper, deliberate. He looked out the reinforced viewport and froze. Hovering above the dusty surface was a ship unlike any he had seen. It wasn't part of any human fleet. Its contours were sleek, alien, and shimmering with a strange light that seemed to move along the hull as if it had a life of its own. Elias felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a twinge of fear. He had spent years on the edges of space, scavenging and exploring, yet he had never encountered anything like this. The ship settled gently onto the landing platform. Its surface glowed softly, almost like it was breathing. A hatch opened, sliding aside with a smooth, fluid motion that no human machine could replicate. Elias instinctively stepped back, uncertain what or who was about to emerge. And then he saw her. She was a young woman, taller than most humans, with skin that shimmered faintly in a color that shifted between silver and pale blue depending on the light. Her eyes were large, luminous, and golden, filled with intelligence and an emotion Elias couldn't immediately place. She paused at the edge of the landing platform, scanning the colony as if she was searching for something or someone. When her gaze met his, she smiled faintly, and then she spoke. "Do you remember me, human?" Elias' heart skipped a beat. He stared at her, mind scrambling. He had never seen her before, or had he? His memory reeled back to a night years ago, far from here, in a place he had almost forgotten. It had been a disaster at a remote alien outpost. He had been part of a small rescue mission after a mining station on the planet Valor Prime collapsed. Most of the workers were aliens, and human involvement had been limited. But there had been a child trapped in the wreckage, injured and frightened, with no hope of rescue from the alien authorities who were too proud to ask for human help. Elias remembered making a choice without thinking, driven by something that humans often called courage or stubbornness. He had risked his life, climbing through collapsing metal and twisted wires, ignoring alarms and the protests of others to pull her out. She had looked at him then, fear and gratitude mixing in her alien eyes. He had saved her life, and then, before he could even consider what it meant, the alien authorities had taken her away. That was it. That had been the last time he saw her. And now she was here on his colony asking him if he remembered. Elias stammered. Words failed him. I think I do." Her smile widened just a fraction, enough to show relief. "I thought you might. I never forgot." She stepped down from the landing platform with a grace that made every motion look effortless. Elias instinctively stepped closer, his curiosity and caution fighting for dominance. Why are you here?" he asked. "My people are in danger," she said simply. "I need your help." The words struck him harder than any physical threat ever could. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, overlooked, ignored. Aliens had advanced technology, ships that could travel light years in hours, weapons that could destroy entire colonies. Humans were nothing compared to that. And yet somehow this alien, the daughter of the Velari queen, had come to him, one human, to ask for help. Elias felt a strange swell of pride mixed with apprehension. It was one thing to save a life on a distant planet. It was another to be called upon by royalty. He had no experience with interstellar politics, no combat training beyond what he had learned as a scavenger. And yet something in him stirred, the same part that had driven him to risk his life years ago. He nodded slowly. "All right, tell me everything." Agra, for that was her name, explained. The Velari, an advanced civilization, were facing a threat unlike any they had known before. A warlord from a distant system sought their technology, intending to conquer and enslave. She had escaped, but she couldn't return to her people without assistance. And she had remembered the human who had once saved her. Elias listened, taking in every detail. His mind raced through possibilities. How they could evade pursuit, how they could survive on planets humans barely understood, how human ingenuity might give them an advantage in ways the aliens wouldn't anticipate. Humans were resourceful, adaptable, and often underestimated, qualities that might make the difference between life and death. Over the next hour, he and Agra moved through the colony, avoiding attention as she explained the urgency of her situation. Children played in the streets, merchants haggled over the last of the day's supplies, and the colony's few guards went about their routines. To the casual observer, nothing unusual was happening, but Elias and Agra knew differently. When they reached the outskirts of the colony, Elias led her to an old shuttle he had salvaged and repaired himself. Its exterior was scratched, dented, and held together by more patches than paint, yet its systems were sound. He had flown it through asteroid storms that would have torn newer models apart. It was, in a word, human, rugged, clever, and surprisingly resilient. "Will this be enough?" she asked, studying the shuttle with a critical eye. "It's all we have," Elias said with a grin. "And trust me, it can handle a lot more than anyone expects." They boarded the shuttle, and as Elias activated the engines, the controls hummed under his hands. Lights flickered across the console, the ship's systems coming online with a satisfying rhythm. He glanced at Agra, who was watching him with an expression that mixed hope and uncertainty. "Hold on," he said. "We're about to leave the quiet little life you thought you knew." The engines roared to life, lifting the shuttle off the ground. The colony receded behind them, shrinking to a dot in the vast expanse of space. Stars stretched ahead, and somewhere beyond them lay danger, uncertainty, and adventure. Elias felt the old thrill, the one that had drawn him to the edges of space years ago. He glanced at Agra. "You trust me?" he asked. "I do," she replied, "because you saved me once, and now maybe you can save more than just one life." Elias smiled faintly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humans were underestimated, yes. But humans were also clever, daring, and unpredictable. And if his life had taught him anything, it was that one human, acting with courage and ingenuity, could change outcomes that seemed impossible. The shuttle streaked toward the stars, leaving behind a quiet colony that would never know the part it had played in the unfolding story of the galaxy. Elias adjusted the controls, his mind already racing through the possibilities. There would be dangers. There would be challenges, and there would be moments where failure seemed inevitable. But he was human, and humans had a habit of surprising the universe. Agra looked out the viewport, golden eyes reflecting the streaking stars. "Do you really understand what you're taking on?" she asked softly. Elias chuckled. "Not really, but I've never been very good at doing what's easy. Let's just hope being human is enough." The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a glittering ribbon of possibilities. Elias gripped the shuttle controls, feeling the familiar vibration of the engines beneath his hands. Every movement, every adjustment, spoke to the years he had spent surviving in the unforgiving reaches of space. Agra sat beside him, her golden eyes wide with curiosity and caution. She had never seen a human pilot like this, one who relied not on advanced AI or complicated technology, but on instinct, experience, and intuition. "Are you sure this shuttle can outrun them?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with urgency. Elias gave a small grin. "It's not about outrunning them, it's about being unpredictable." He adjusted the throttle and the shuttle tilted gracefully, slipping through a narrow asteroid belt that stretched ahead. "Aliens like to calculate everything. They think in patterns. Humans, we break patterns." Agra watched him, amazed. Every time Elias made a move, he exploited a detail she hadn't noticed. Tiny asteroid fragments that could have smashed the ship were avoided by centimeters. Light trails from distant stars created illusions of obstacles, and Elias used them to hide their path. "Why didn't anyone teach your kind to fly like this?" she asked, almost to herself. Elias laughed, a sound rough from years of shouting over engines and storms. "We learn from surviving, not from rules." The shuttle slipped through the asteroid belt and into a quiet stretch of open space. Agra leaned back in her seat, studying the controls. "You're clever, human, but cleverness alone won't stop them." Elias didn't answer immediately. He scanned the surrounding systems, his mind working faster than any calculation the shuttle could perform. Maybe not, he admitted, but cleverness combined with stubbornness, well, that's dangerous. Agra smiled faintly at his words. She had seen courage before in Velari warriors, trained from birth to fight and defend. But courage combined with ingenuity was rare. Elia's had it in spades, and it was that unpredictability that gave her hope. Their quiet moment was broken by a sudden flash on the monitor. Sensors were picking up a ship approaching rapidly, its signature unfamiliar but ominous. Elia's brow furrowed. They found us faster than I expected. Agra's eyes narrowed. It must be the warlord's scouts. They are relentless. Elias adjusted the shuttle's course, weaving through a cluster of debris. Good. Let's make them regret it. The first enemy ship emerged from behind a floating rock formation. Sleek and sharp-edged, it moved with precision, weapons already charging. Agra tensed, instinctively reaching for the emergency controls, but Elias shook his head. Trust me, let them come. He tapped into the shuttle's minor thrusters, making sudden, jerky movements. The scouts' calculations, precise for most ships, failed here. The enemy fired, but their shots passed harmlessly behind the shuttle. Elias laughed under his breath, exhilarated by the dance. Every move was a challenge, every miscalculation a potential death, but also a potential advantage. Agra watched, awe and relief mingling in her expression. She had been trained to expect the universe to be dangerous, but she had never imagined danger handled with this combination of daring and precision. Every twist of the shuttle, every sudden dive, was human ingenuity in motion. After several tense minutes, the scout finally disengaged, retreating with a hiss of energy as Elias outmaneuvered it completely. Not bad for a human, huh? He said, grinning. Agra shook her head, a small smile breaking through her tension. You're different from what I expected. Humans are clever, but you are something else. The reprieve was brief. Another signal blinked on the monitor, larger and more aggressive this time. The warlord's main fleet had found them. Elias' grin faded as he studied the approaching vessels. They were numerous, armed with weapons that could tear the shuttle apart with a single hit. We can't outrun them, he muttered. But we can survive long enough to find a way to fight back. Agra's expression hardened. We must reach the neutral zone. It is the only place they cannot attack openly. If we can get there, Elias nodded. He had heard rumors of these neutral zones, mysterious regions where no fleet dared to fire, where ancient treaties enforced peace. Then that's where we're headed, but getting there will require brains and guts, both of which we've got, I hope. As the shuttle raced through space, they approached a planet marked as uninhabited on most charts. Elias aimed for it, knowing the terrain could hide them, give them cover while they planned their next move. The surface was jagged with deep canyons and towering rock formations. Sensors showed no life signs, but the planet's unstable atmosphere and unpredictable gravity made landing dangerous. Are you sure about this? Agra asked. Elias' eyes sparkled. Humans love a challenge. Let's see if this planet wants to play. The shuttle descended rapidly, weaving between rocky towers, dodging sudden electrical storms that danced across the canyons. The controls shook violently, and for a moment it seemed as if the shuttle would be ripped apart. But Elias kept his focus, adjusting every move with precision honed by years of experience. Finally, with a rough skid, the shuttle landed on a flat plateau, kicking up dust and debris. Agra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You call that landing? She said, half amused, half impressed. Elias shrugged. I call it survival. Once they were safe, he stepped out to survey the area. The wind howled across the rocky plateau, carrying with it dust and an almost metallic scent. Agra followed, her eyes scanning the horizon for threats. Even in this dangerous place, Elias felt alive, the thrill of the unknown coursing through him. Humans thrived on challenges like this, on situations where thinking fast and acting faster meant the difference between life and death. They spent hours exploring the plateau, finding caves that could shelter them and natural formations that could serve as observation points. Elias pointed out places where they could set traps, where human ingenuity could create advantages against a technologically superior enemy. Agra watched him, learning, adapting. She realized that humans weren't just strong in body or weapon. They were strong in mind, capable of turning even the most hostile environments into allies. Night fell, and the plateau was bathed in the pale light of twin moons. Agra sat beside the shuttle, her thoughts heavy with concern. Elias joined her, offering a simple human smile. "We'll be okay," he said. "It's not over, but we've got options." Agra nodded, but her gaze was distant. "You saved me once, human. I thought it was a fluke, a moment of luck. But now I see it was more than that. Humans, you don't give up." Elias shrugged. "We have to keep going. The universe doesn't wait, and neither should we." The wind swept across the plateau, carrying the whispers of a galaxy full of dangers. Somewhere out there, the warlord's fleet waited, and somewhere else, allies and enemies alike plotted their next moves. Elias and Agra were small against the vastness of space, but as humans often proved, being small did not mean being powerless. The next day, Elias worked tirelessly, using salvaged materials from his shuttle and the rocky terrain to construct makeshift defenses. He showed Agra how to use natural formations to their advantage, how to predict enemy movements based on patterns, and how to improvise when technology failed. Agra learned quickly, her alien mind adapting to human strategies. As they worked, Elias explained why humans survived in ways the Veleri often did not. "We don't rely only on what's perfect or predictable. We take risks, we improvise, and when the odds are impossible, we find ways to make them possible." Agra nodded slowly, beginning to understand. She had always believed that strength lay in technology and numbers. Now she saw that courage, ingenuity, and adaptability could turn even the smallest human into a force to be reckoned with. Hours later, as the twin moons rose again, they heard a distant hum, a faint vibration in the ground. Elias' eyes narrowed. "They found us again," Agra tensed. "They've tracked us here." Elias shook his head. "No, this time they think they know where we are, but we're ready." With a calm born from experience, Elias guided Agra to a hidden vantage point. Using the rocks and shadows, they prepared to face whatever came next. When the first scout ship appeared above the plateau, Elias smiled faintly. "Let us show them what humans can do." The shuttle's engines roared to life, sending shadows dancing across the rocky terrain. Agra's eyes widened as she realized that survival was not just about fleeing. It was about using every advantage, every trick, and every ounce of courage. And humans had plenty of all three. The first battle was about to begin, and for the first time, Agra felt something she had never felt before: hope. Not because of her people, not because of her own power, but because of the human who had once saved her, and who was now proving that a single human could face impossible odds and still make a difference. Elias adjusted the shuttle's weapons systems with a calm, steady hand. The stars above glimmered like silent witnesses. He didn't know if they would win or if survival would mean retreating once again. But he knew one thing: humans were underestimated for a reason, and underestimation could be deadly for anyone who faced them. Agra glanced at him, her golden eyes reflecting determination and trust. "Lead the way, human," she said softly. Elias' grin returned, fierce and confident. "That's the plan. Let's make them remember us." The first rays of light from the twin suns cut across the jagged plateau, glinting off the metal surfaces of the shuttle and the rocky terrain around them. Elias was already awake, checking the shuttle's engines and sensors. Agra sat nearby, still learning the rhythm of human patience and observation. She had thought she understood strategy from years of Veleri training, but what she saw now was different. Humans did not move according to strict plans or rigid codes. They adapted, they observed, and they seized opportunities no one else could see. Elias tightened a panel, muttering under his breath as he adjusted the sensors to detect approaching ships from unusual angles. "They won't expect this," he said almost to himself. "Aliens rely on straight lines and numbers. Humans think in curves, in angles, in surprises." Agra nodded, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. She had begun to trust him not just because he had saved her life years ago, but because she could see that he was already preparing for dangers she could not even predict. His mind worked in ways that combined instinct with experience, and it gave her hope. Hours passed, and the plateau remained quiet. Elias used the time to explain how humans could turn even the harshest terrain into an advantage. He pointed out cracks in the rock where traps could be set, natural overhangs that could shield them from sensors, and small caves that could serve as ambush points. Agra listened, learning to combine her Veleri knowledge with his improvisation. "They are clever, human," she said finally after a long silence, "but perhaps they do not see how adaptable you are." Elias chuckled. Clever is nothing without flexibility. You can have the most advanced fleet, the strongest ships, the deadliest weapons, but if you can't adapt, you're dead the first time things go wrong. Her gaze softened. I begin to understand. Humans, you are dangerous in ways we do not expect. Their discussion was cut short by a sudden tremor. The ground beneath them shook violently, throwing dust and loose rocks into the air. Elias grabbed a support beam as Agra steadied herself. That's no ordinary quake, he said, scanning the terrain. Something is coming. Through the dusty haze, shapes began to appear. Enemy scouts, sleek ships like the one that had chased them before, were emerging from the sky, moving faster than sensors could easily track. Elias' grin returned, fierce and confident. Time to show them how humans fight. He jumped into the shuttle, firing up the engines. Agra followed, her hands gripping the edge of the console as the ship shook beneath them. Elias maneuvered the shuttle with precision, weaving between the rocky towers, dodging incoming fire, and using the planet's terrain as a shield. Each movement was calculated yet instinctive, a balance humans often mastered naturally. The enemy fired repeatedly, but their shots either missed or struck harmless rock, sending debris in all directions. Elias laughed under his breath. Predictable, he muttered. You'll learn eventually. Agra leaned close, studying his methods. You are not only courageous, she said. You are intuitive. You see possibilities that others cannot. Experience, Elias replied, and humans don't give up easily. Hours passed in a blur of maneuvers, narrow escapes, and improvised tactics. Finally, the scouts, frustrated and outmaneuvered, retreated. Elias brought the shuttle to a stop on a rocky ridge, breathing heavily. They'll be back, he said. They always come back. Agra nodded. And when they do, we will be ready. As night fell, they camped near the shuttle, using small fires and shields to mask their heat signatures. Elias taught Agra basic human survival skills, how to use the environment to hide, how to move quietly, and how to anticipate danger. She absorbed everything, her mind a rapid processor, combining her own training with his lessons. You have taught me something important, she said as they watched the stars. Strength is not always in numbers or technology. Sometimes it is in courage, in thinking differently, and in the will to survive. Elias nodded, staring at the stars. That's what humans have always relied on. We are adaptable, stubborn, and a little reckless, but it works. The next day, Elias led Agra to a canyon that ran deep into the heart of the planet. The canyon walls were steep, the floor uneven, and the path winding and narrow. It was perfect for what he had planned, a place where even the most advanced fleet would struggle to follow, a natural trap where human ingenuity could turn the environment into a weapon. As they moved cautiously through the canyon, sensors picked up a large shadow overhead. Agra froze. They are coming, she whispered. Elias' eyes gleamed. Good, let's give them a lesson they won't forget. The first enemy ship descended into the canyon, sleek and glinting under the sun. Elias had anticipated their approach, and he guided the shuttle to a narrow pass. Rocks were stacked precariously on ledges, waiting for a slight push. With precise timing, he triggered small charges he had set earlier, sending a cascade of rocks down into the path of the enemy ship. The ship veered sharply to avoid destruction, firing wildly, but the narrow canyon limited its movement. Elias used the shuttle's thrusters to dart in and out, striking vulnerable points and disappearing into the shadows. Agra watched in awe. No Velari tactics could have predicted these moves, only human creativity and courage could. Hours of cat and mouse followed, each maneuver carefully planned yet flexible, relying on instinct as much as skill. By the end of the day, the enemy scouts had been repelled, their forces temporarily scattered and confused. Elias and Agra emerged from the canyon, breathing heavily but triumphant. You are remarkable, human, Agra said finally. I understand why you were able to save me before. You are not just brave, you are clever, and your mind is your weapon. Elias smiled faintly. Humans have survived by being clever for a long time. We improvise, adapt, and never give up. Sometimes that's all it takes to turn the odds in our favor. Agra's expression softened. Then I will learn from you. Together, perhaps we can protect more than just ourselves. Perhaps we can protect my people. The days that followed were filled with training, planning, and exploration. Elias showed Agra how to use the shuttle in ways no Velari pilot would have considered, making simple tools into weapons, turning the environment into a battlefield advantage. and using unpredictability as a shield. She learned quickly, adapting human techniques to her own abilities. One night, as they rested in a hidden cave, Agra spoke quietly. Do you ever wonder if humans are underestimated for a reason? Perhaps the universe fears what we cannot predict. Elias laughed softly. I think the universe just hasn't learned yet, but it will. Eventually, humans always leave a mark. She looked at him, eyes reflecting the twin moons outside the cave. I believe you, human. I believe in your kind, and I believe in you. Elias felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for humanity. Humans were often underestimated, overlooked, dismissed as weak or simple. Yet here they were, standing against impossible odds with nothing but courage, adaptability, and ingenuity. Humans were small compared to the galaxy, yet their potential was limitless. The next morning, as they prepared to leave the canyon, sensors detected a larger fleet approaching. The warlord himself had arrived. Agra's eyes widened in fear, but Elias remained calm. It's time for the real test, he said. Humans don't run from challenges. We face them, and we find a way to survive. They flew toward the approaching fleet, weaving through asteroids and using narrow passes to limit enemy movement. Elias' mind raced with strategies, each one relying on human unpredictability. The enemy fired, but their shots were anticipated, countered, and avoided. Every move they made was calculated, yet flexible, using the environment, the shuttle, and their ingenuity. Agra marveled at the display. She had seen fleets, weapons, and technology far superior to anything humans could build, yet here she was, witnessing one human and one alien surviving against impossible odds. It was a lesson she would never forget. By the time the sun set on the canyon, the enemy fleet had been repelled, forced to retreat temporarily. Elias guided the shuttle to a hidden plateau where they could rest and plan their next move. Agra looked at him with awe. You are more than I imagined, human. Perhaps one day your kind will be remembered not just for survival, but for brilliance. Elias shook his head. We're not here to be remembered. We're here to survive and protect. If we leave a mark, that's a bonus. Agra smiled faintly. Then I will follow your lead, human. And together, perhaps we can change the course of events in ways even the universe cannot predict. As the stars emerged above them, Elias felt the thrill of adventure and the weight of responsibility. Humans were underestimated, yes. But humans were clever, adaptable, and resilient. And in the vastness of space, sometimes that was enough to turn the tide against forces far stronger and more advanced. The canyon behind them remained silent, the dust settling over the rocks. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and challenges they could not yet see. Yet Elias knew one thing: as long as humans used their minds, their courage, and their unpredictability, there was hope. And hope in the vast universe could be more powerful than any weapon. Agra leaned back in the shuttle, her eyes reflecting determination and trust. Lead the way, human, she said softly. Elias smiled, adjusting the controls. That's the plan. Let's show them what humans can really do. The neutral zone was supposed to be a safe haven, a stretch of space where no fleet dared attack, enforced by ancient treaties older than most civilizations. Elias had heard legends of it, but had never crossed into one himself. Agra, however, knew its importance. If they could reach the zone, they could buy time, plan their next moves, and gather allies. But the warlord would not allow them to escape easily. As they approached the border of the neutral zone, sensors lit up with dozens of enemy ships. The warlord had anticipated their move. He had brought his fleet, larger and more heavily armed than anything Elias had ever faced. Ships glinted in the light of distant stars, each one bristling with weapons. Agra's grip on the console tightened as she assessed the situation. There are too many of them, she said, voice calm but tense. We cannot outrun this fleet. Elias studied the readings, his mind already racing. Then we won't outrun them. We'll fight in a way they cannot expect. He adjusted the shuttle's thrusters and shields, a grin spreading across his face. It's time to remind the universe why humans are underestimated. Agra watched him with awe. She had faced enemies, trained for battles, and commanded squads, but she had never seen strategy like this. Elias didn't rely on strength or advanced weapons. He relied on unpredictability, improvisation, and his ability to use the environment to his advantage. Humans, she realized, were dangerous not because they were stronger, but because they were impossible to predict. The first wave of enemy ships surged toward them. Elias twisted the shuttle, weaving through asteroids and debris. Enemy lasers burned past, missing by inches, striking rocks that exploded in clouds of dust. Elias laughed under his breath, exhilarated. "Predictable," he muttered. "Every one of them thinks they know what's coming. They don't." Agra joined him, coordinating shield patterns and scanning for weaknesses. Her Velari training helped, but she found herself relying on Elias' instincts. Together, they became a unit, human and alien, blending intuition with precision. The enemy adapted quickly, splitting their fleet to surround them. Elias anticipated it, leading them through a narrow asteroid field where the larger warlord ships could not follow easily. The chase became a dance, the shuttle twisting, diving, and darting with impossible agility. Every movement tested the limits of the ship, yet Elias controlled it with calm certainty. Hours passed in tension and strategy. Enemy ships fired relentlessly, but Elias' human ingenuity and knowledge of the terrain allowed them to escape unscathed. The shuttle darted behind asteroids, skimming past massive rocks that shielded them from detection, then suddenly appearing in open space to strike at an enemy scout before vanishing again. Agra's admiration grew with every move. "How do you do this?" she asked, her voice filled with amazement. "Your mind, it's like it sees everything at once." Elias shook his head, concentrating on the next maneuver. "It's not magic. Humans learn by surviving. We think fast, adapt, and use what others ignore. That's our advantage." As the fleet closed in, Elias realized the neutral zone was within reach, but so were the warlord's most powerful ships. He calculated the risks, knowing that a single mistake could destroy them both. "Hold on," he said. "We're going to do something they won't see coming." He steered the shuttle toward a massive asteroid field, denser than any they had crossed before. The rocks were jagged, unpredictable, and dangerous, but Elias knew them like a chessboard. Enemy ships hesitated at the edge, cautious of collision. Elias smiled. "Fear of the unknown slows them down. That's all we need." The shuttle weaved through the field, narrowly avoiding collisions. Agra monitored shields and weapons, ready to strike any ship that followed too closely. The warlord's fleet pressed on, overconfident in their numbers and technology. They were powerful, yes, but Elias had something they didn't: human unpredictability. Suddenly, a massive enemy ship moved into the path ahead. Its weapons glowed, ready to fire. Elias' eyes narrowed. Time to improvise. He engaged the shuttle's minor thrusters and sent a small, remote explosive ahead. The device detonated against a rock, sending debris flying directly into the enemy ship's path. The ship swerved violently, losing stability. Agra's voice was sharp, "Excellent," but the celebration was brief. More ships moved to intercept. Elias knew they could not escape purely with luck. They had to fight smart. He led them to a canyon whose walls were sharp, high, and nearly vertical. Enemy ships, larger and less maneuverable, struggled to follow. The canyon funneled them into a narrow path where the shuttle could strike from above, using gravity and terrain as weapons. Agra watched in awe as Elias used small rock slides, debris, and controlled explosions to disable enemy ships one by one. Each move relied on careful calculation and quick improvisation. He didn't just fight, he turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. Hours later, the majority of the fleet had been damaged or forced to retreat. Only the warlord's flagship remained, larger and deadlier than anything they had seen. Its weapons glowed with destructive energy, and its hull was nearly impervious to conventional attacks. Agra's eyes widened. "This ship, it could destroy your shuttle in a single hit." Elias nodded, his expression calm. "I know, but we're not using conventional attacks." He analyzed the canyon's structure, noting weak points in the rock formations, angles that could cause massive collapses. "If we can trap him here, the canyon will do the work for us." Agra's trust in him was complete now. She coordinated their shields and systems, preparing for the final maneuver. Elias led the flagship into the canyon with careful, calculated provocations. The warlord, confident and arrogant, pursued. At the right moment, Elias triggered charges placed earlier in the canyon, sending massive boulders crashing down. The flagship was forced to dodge, its massive size making maneuvering difficult. Rocks struck its hull, causing explosions that forced it to retreat slightly. The canyon walls groaned, shifting under the impact, and Elias guided the shuttle through narrow passages, luring the warlord's ship further into danger. Agra watched, amazed at his strategy. "He underestimates you," she whispered. "Not for long," Elias replied. The flagship, blinded by its own overconfidence, struck a weak point in the canyon. Rocks tumbled, creating a chain reaction that trapped the massive ship. Its weapons fired blindly, missing everything, while Elias used the distraction to strike critical systems with precision shots from the shuttle. Minutes later, the flagship's engines faltered, weapons went offline, and the warlord's personal ship drifted powerless. Elias maneuvered closer, ensuring it could not escape. The warlord's fleet, scattered and damaged, had no choice but to retreat. Agra's eyes filled with admiration and relief. "I have never seen such courage. You did not fight with brute strength, you fought with your mind." Elias smiled faintly, exhaustion lining his face. "Humans have always had to survive with what we have: brains, courage, and a little luck." For the first time in months, the shuttle was free to move without pursuit. They entered the neutral zone, its silence and stillness a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. Elias guided the shuttle to a safe orbit, taking a moment to rest. Agra sat beside him, her golden eyes reflecting stars, and she finally allowed herself to breathe fully. "You saved us," she said softly. "You saved more than just me this time. You saved my people's chance to survive." Elias shrugged. "We did it together. Humans are clever, yes, but everyone has a role. You fought well, too." She smiled faintly. "I see now that courage and ingenuity are not limited to one species. I will remember this day, human, and so will others." Elias leaned back in his seat, staring at the endless stars ahead. Humans were often underestimated, their strength overlooked. But he knew now more than ever that one human, using intelligence, courage, and creativity, could change the fate of worlds. Agra reached over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Do you realize what this means?" she asked. "Your kind, humanity, you have allies across galaxies now, and you have proven that humans are more than you ever believed." Elias smiled, feeling the weight of truth in her words. "We're just getting started," he said quietly. "The universe hasn't seen what humans can really do yet." The neutral zone stretched before them, quiet and untouched, a safe place to plan and recover. But Elias knew it was only temporary. The warlord would regroup, other dangers would appear, and challenges would arise that would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Yet for now, they had survived. And survival, they both knew, was only the first step. The next step would be victory, and that would require more courage, more creativity, and more human determination than anyone in the galaxy had ever expected. Agra looked at Elias, her expression a mixture of trust, admiration, and resolve. "Lead the way," she said softly. Elias adjusted the shuttle's controls, eyes on the stars. "We will, and we'll do it our way, the human way." For the first time in months, the galaxy felt slightly less dangerous because the human spirit, unpredictable, clever, and fearless, had proven it could face anything. The neutral zone stretched before Elias and Agra like a silent ocean of stars. For the first time in weeks, they felt a moment of calm. The warlord's fleet had been forced to retreat, scattered by the ingenuity and courage of a single human and one determined alien. But Elias knew better than to let this calm fool him. In the galaxy, peace was temporary, danger was constant, and challenges sometimes came from places no one expected. Agra moved to the shuttle's observation deck, her golden eyes tracing the twinkling stars. "Do you think they will come back?" she asked, her voice quiet but filled with concern. Elias leaned against the console, arms crossed, studying the instruments. "They always come back. They underestimate humans too much, and humans, well, we don't quit." He gave a small smile. "But if they return, they'll learn a lesson they won't forget." Agra nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. She had witnessed the human ability to improvise, to take risks, and to turn impossible situations into opportunities. The courage of one human had changed the tide of battle against forces that dwarfed them in strength, numbers, and technology. And now, she understood why humans were both underestimated and feared. For the next several days, they stayed hidden within the neutral zone, repairing the shuttle and gathering intelligence. Elias used the time to teach Agra more about human strategy. They discussed traps, surprise attacks, and improvisation in combat. Agra listened intently, absorbing everything like a sponge. She had been trained her whole life in military tactics, but the human way of thinking, flexible, creative, and unpredictable, was unlike anything she had ever encountered. One evening, as they watched the stars from the shuttle's observation deck, Agra turned to Elias. "Do you know why I asked if you remembered me when we first met?" Elias tilted his head. Because I saved your life years ago, she smiled softly. Yes, but also because I wanted to see if humans ever change. If you remembered kindness, courage, and the willingness to risk yourself for others, even when the universe seemed impossible. Elias felt a warmth in his chest. We don't always get it right, but when we do, it matters. Every choice matters. Agra's smile widened. Then I am glad I found you again, human, because you are more than I ever imagined. Their quiet moment was broken by an alert on the shuttle's sensors. The warlord had returned, but this time he was not alone. His fleet had grown larger and his ships were equipped with new, more advanced weapons. Elias' jaw tightened. Looks like they didn't learn their lesson, he muttered. Agra stood beside him, determination in her gaze. Then we will remind them together. Elias nodded, scanning the enemy formation. The fleet was vast, but they had advantages the warlord could not anticipate. The neutral zone's rules limited the enemy's options. And more importantly, Elias had the one thing the warlord had forgotten: unpredictability. He guided the shuttle through a series of asteroid fields, using debris and gravitational anomalies to mask their movements. Agra monitored enemy sensors, coordinating their shields and weapons. They are trying to flank us, she warned. Elias smiled faintly. Let them try. He maneuvered the shuttle into a narrow canyon, invisible from most sensors. Enemy ships followed, unaware that they were entering a trap. Minutes later, the first enemy vessel emerged into the canyon. Elias had prepared charges along the walls, and with precise timing, he detonated them. Massive rocks tumbled down, blocking the ship's path and forcing it to turn sharply. The vessel struggled to maneuver, and the shuttle struck it with targeted blasts, disabling critical systems. Agra's eyes widened in admiration. You think of everything human? Elias shrugged. Experience and instinct, that's how humans survive. The battle escalated. Enemy ships pressed from every direction, but Elias used the terrain to divide and confuse them. Narrow passages prevented larger ships from attacking effectively, while smaller vessels were lured into ambushes. Each move relied on human ingenuity, adaptability, and boldness. Agra joined the fight actively, using her Velari abilities to predict enemy movements and assist Elias in coordinating strikes. Together, they became a seamless team, blending human unpredictability with alien skill. Hours passed, and the enemy fleet began to falter. The warlord's flagship, massive and heavily armed, advanced toward them, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. Elias knew this would be the ultimate test. He had to use everything he had learned and every advantage he could create. He led the flagship toward a region of the neutral zone known for gravitational anomalies. The warlord, confident in his ship's power, followed. As predicted, the anomalies disrupted the flagship systems, causing weapons and shields to flicker. Elias guided the shuttle through tight passages, exploiting the instability to disable critical engines. Agra's voice was calm and steady. Now, human. Elias fired a series of precise shots, targeting weak points in the flagship's hull. Explosions rocked the massive ship, and it drifted helplessly, unable to maneuver. The remaining enemy vessels, seeing their leader incapacitated, began to retreat. Agra let out a breath she had been holding. It is over, she said softly. Elias nodded, feeling exhaustion but also a surge of satisfaction. For now, but it's never truly over. There's always another challenge, another enemy, another opportunity to prove ourselves. The shuttle drifted in the calm of the neutral zone. Stars reflected off the hull, peaceful after the chaos of battle. Agra turned to Elias. You have done more than I could have imagined. You did not fight with overwhelming power. You fought with courage, strategy, and human ingenuity. Elias smiled faintly. That's what humans do. We adapt, we fight, and when it seems impossible, we find a way. Agra placed a hand on his shoulder. Do you realize what you have done, not just for me, but for my people? You have changed the course of events. Your actions will be remembered. Elias shook his head. I don't do it for recognition. I do it because it's right, because someone has to act. Humans have survived in impossible situations for centuries. We don't always succeed, but we don't quit. Agra looked at him with admiration and respect. Then I will make sure your people are recognized for what they are. Humans are more than you realize, and you are extraordinary. The shuttle remained in orbit, resting and repairing. Elias and Agra spent the following days planning their next moves. They knew the warlord would eventually return, and other threats could arise at any time. But for now, they had a moment of peace, a rare opportunity to rest, reflect, and prepare. Agra studied the stars, her thoughts distant. "I never imagined that one human could make such a difference," she said. "You have reminded me that courage and ingenuity are powerful weapons, perhaps more powerful than any technology." Elias smiled. "Humans have survived because we rely on our minds, our courage, and our ability to adapt. Strength isn't always measured in ships or weapons. Sometimes it's measured in determination." The next morning, they received a transmission from the Velari Queen herself. Her voice was regal, but gratitude and relief shone through. "Elias," she said, "you have done what we believed impossible. You have protected my daughter, defended our people, and proven that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. You will always have allies among the Velari." Elias leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was the right thing, but it's nice to hear." Agra added softly, "You have saved more than lives, human. You have saved hope. And that is something that can never be destroyed." Elias nodded, looking at the stars stretching endlessly before them. "Humans survive, Agra. We always find a way, and sometimes we even thrive." The Queen's transmission ended, leaving a quiet calm in the shuttle. Agra turned to Elias, her expression thoughtful. "Do you remember me?" she asked again softly. Elias smiled, the memory of the first time they had met flooding back. "I do," he said, "and now I will never forget what we have done together." Agra smiled, golden eyes reflecting hope, trust, and gratitude. "Then we are allies, human, for the future, for the stars." Elias nodded, adjusting the shuttle's controls. "For the future," he agreed. He looked out at the endless expanse of space, thinking of the challenges ahead, the dangers lurking in the darkness, and the countless opportunities for humans to prove their worth. And humans never back down. The stars shimmered like silent witnesses as the shuttle prepared to leave the neutral zone. Elias and Agra, human and alien, pilot and princess, had faced impossible odds and survived. They had fought with courage, intelligence, and determination. And in the vast universe, where strength was measured in numbers, technology, and firepower, they had proven something more important, that ingenuity, courage, and the human spirit could change the course of events. Elias glanced at Agra, a small grin spreading across his face. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked. Agra nodded, a determined smile lighting her features. "Always human, with you leading we cannot fail." And together they launched into the stars, leaving behind the neutral zone, the battle, and the enemies they had overcome. Ahead lay unknown dangers, new worlds, and new challenges. But Elias knew one thing for certain. Humans, clever, brave, and unpredictable, would always rise to face them. The universe was vast, and the stars stretched endlessly. But one human and one alien had shown that courage, ingenuity, and determination could leave an unshakable mark, even across galaxies. And so, the story of Elias, the human who once saved a princess, and Agra, the alien who trusted him, continued. Together, they proved that humans were not to be underestimated, that one person could change the fate of worlds, and that the human spirit, bright and relentless, could shine even in the darkest corners of the universe.